Welcome to Survey Booker Sessions. Tune in to hear from people working in a range of industries and roles to provide you ideas that you can take away and use in your own business. I'm your host, Matt Nally, the founder and director of Survey Booker, which is the leading CRM and survey management system for surveyors. On this week's episode, we've got Dan Drogman from Smart Spaces. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
That's great to have you on. It was an interesting chatting briefly before this to learn some more. But do you want to, do you want to give everyone an overview as to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm Dan Drogman. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Smart Spaces, a smart building operating system running across 75 million square feet. And our purpose at Smart Spaces is to optimize environments for people on the planet. And what that translates to is optimizing how people use the workplace. So that's desk booking, meeting room booking, food ordering, but then connecting that to the building system so we only power spaces on when they're used and don't waste energy when they're empty.
Awesome. I imagine this is going to be a very interesting episode as we go through everything. I suppose a bit of background. How did you get into it?
Yeah, nice. That's an interesting question. So I started in the industry in 2004. I graduated from UAL, so I went to University of Arts, and I was studying web design and development. So at that time, it was the dot-com boom. So I joined UAL in 1998, and it was the dot-com boom. So web designers were getting paid some seriously high salaries. That attracted me. Plus, I had a big passion for design and programming. I'd always excelled at IT because my dad got me my first PC when I was about 5 years old, and that was MS-DOS based, so everything was command line. So I sort of had that natural ability, but really what I liked to spend my days doing was in Paint or Photoshop designing. So web design was the perfect sort of merger of technology and design. And went to study web design and interactive media. And we've done some really advanced websites using a technology called Flash. I remember Flash died a few years back. Some of my developers here, when we go to conferences, they introduce me as a Flash developer because they know it's a dead technology and they're basically having a dig at me. But obviously the real sad thing was dot-com crash. So then I joined the industry, nowhere near the salary that I expected. But what we found was I actually had a passion for the more technical side. Certainly design and user experience is paramount. But so we started developing some quite advanced software for the time, 2004, like data rooms to sell assets. Intranets for big business parks. And that's when we first got the idea. And we didn't obviously know the smartphone would arrive later, but we got the idea of wrapping up the services available to office tenants on a single platform and recording what they use and giving them access to it and allowing for payments and so on. Back then, when we built these intranets, but very embarrassingly, when we tracked the amount of people that logged into the intranets, no one used it. And we were very, very upset. We poured our hearts and soul into it. So when we got the second time round, when the smartphone got mass adoption and the App Store come around, we actually revisited it. And first of all, this was doing more work for hotels, actually, that offered conferencing and meeting room facilities. And they had a lot of aspirations for smart. So they invited us in to meet Apple. And we met Apple and looked at the iBeacon program, which detects where you are and which buildings you've located to and allows us to create prompts in apps and so on. And that's when sort of the genesis of the idea come around. And then, fast forward to about 2014, so 10 years later into my career, we had a fantastic opportunity to revisit the intranet projects, but utilising an app. And knowing that no one would use the platform in its previous form, we needed to bring those transactional elements in. And those elements resulted in access, so mobile access, ANPR access for the car park, booking the gym, booking a meeting room, paying for your lunch. These are all transactional pieces. And if you can make a killer user experience that makes it easier through the app than the alternative, you've got a user base, you've got product market fit. And that was the genesis of Smart Spaces.
That's fascinating. So what was the big driver then between usage from the internet version to the app version? Is it because it's in your pocket, it's easier to get hold of, or is it because you're then more forced to use it just because how everything interconnects now, or is it a mixture of both? Or
yes, it's totally a mixture of both. So I think the intranet fell down. That actually most people found it easier to email reception and say, "I want this room for this time," you're guilty of those processes where you allowed that to happen. Rather than push people back to the internet and say, no, look, you can book it yourself, it's self-service, they were like, no, fine, we'll book it for you. But I think over time, as like those operating costs have been squeezed, and you no longer have the luxury of like someone running your park for you. You know, there's less staff running these assets than ever. You have to be stronger, and you have to say no. You know, book it yourself. Plus, I think it's an education piece. I think back then, it hadn't reached maturity. Like a lot of people hadn't moved to internet banking, so they weren't comfortable with booking things online. They were either scared of it, didn't know how to do it. Whereas what we see, even throughout the era of the smartphone, it was early adopters to start with, but the moment our grannies got smartphones, we knew, wow, we've got access to a much wider audience, and they're willing to use and embrace it. And so, I think it's convenience, it's actually people understanding how to use it, and then the transactional element is just what makes life easy for them.
Awesome. Okay, so I suppose that brings us up to the point now where we've got smart building. So I suppose for part one, then we'll probably discuss what certain things are, and then we'll come on to benefits in part two. But I suppose at its very core, then, what is a smart building? What does that mean? I know we've got smart TVs and Alexas and stuff in the house, but what's a smart building at its core?
Yeah, certainly. So from a commercial aspect, it is a building that has the ultimate user experience. So it's very easy to access the amenities and understand what the amenities are. It offers a fantastic set of amenities, but it optimizes those amenities. And so what that could mean that it will enable you to get from street to seat very fast using your mobile app and using Apple Wallet. So you can access it with your smartwatch, you can access it with your phone. If your phone battery goes flat, you still can access the building for up to 4 hours. Now, before you get to the building, you can book your desk, you can book your meeting rooms, you can book your locker, and you also can use the Apple Wallet access to access those facilities as well. Now, all of this records data into the cloud, which then can be analysed to optimise that. So you can look at your peak times, you can look at your quiet times, you can manage a roster, you can manage neighbourhoods. So then when a team member books, you can suggest that they book in the same zone so they're productive when they're there. They're not just going in and working on their own and not making the most of being in the office. Your time, all these things together on a common user experience, but then tracking it. And more importantly, linking it back to what spaces are online, where are you providing fresh air, where are you providing cooling or heating, and when someone leaves, disabling those. But not doing it too early that you get a complaint that someone's cold at 5 o'clock, and not doing it too late in the morning that they're cold when they arrive or too hot when they arrive. And also understanding what people like, their preferences. So running one space at 20 Celsius, one space at 21 Celsius, showing that on the desk booking plan, showing how noisy the two environments are, maybe having some warmer lighting in the warmer area, cooler lighting in the cool area, and then give people the ability to choose where they go and then track what they like and then make more of what they like and take away the space they don't like. So it's tying all these things together onto a common platform and then optimizing. And a good case study would be one of our clients started with us in about 2018. They had 500 staff. They were predicting expansion, which was really nice. So they actually leased an office for 750 people. They've now managed to scale to 1,500 with the same amount of space. And they use our software to facilitate access to that space, and then they use sensors connected to our platform to make sure that they're using it as efficiently as possible, which means that they haven't had to lease more space. They foresee they won't need to lease more space for another 2 years, which based on their headcount is a saving of about 1.2 million a year in rent, and that doesn't even account for the energy. No. So that's the true thing. It's all about productivity and optimizing things.
That's fascinating change there, because I suppose traditionally people would have just gone, right, we're going to have to move into a bigger premises earlier, and then of course people got to get familiar with new spaces and decorating and moving. So big benefits. Is it something that is also used in resi in similar way, or is the key benefits for smart buildings in sort of larger scale commercial hotels, that type of thing?
Yeah. So we are focusing on commercial. But yeah, it definitely has the same application within hotels. I think, people sometimes get it going to their room and the lights don't come on until you put the card in. And so what they do is they put a business card in, or they put another card in, and keep the lights and HVAC on where they're out. Obviously, with the smartphone, we know they're not there. We can disable that space, but we can give them rewards for that, so they don't feel like they're getting tracked unnecessarily. That we are, doing the ethical thing and not preventing waste. We can give them a reward and say, well, actually, you've saved this much energy, so you've got the percentage off a coffee in reception. So you're getting a payback. And as soon as people get a payback, they're way more open to sharing that data. So, I think it applies to hotels. The exact same for build to rent, BTR, because, again, where you're not paying the energy, it doesn't affect you financially, whether you have the heating on and the windows open in deep winter. And so people abuse it. But I think if you can incentivize them, and that would be providing a fantastic return on investment for saving energy, they'll do it. And I think that's where the same technology falls into resi and hotels.
Awesome. Okay. And there's a couple of other things I saw on your website linked in with smart buildings, which were obviously AI, which I think you kind of touched on in terms of data analysis, and we'll come on to in a second, but also digital twins. So I suppose firstly, what's a digital twin, and why is it useful within the smart building space?
Yeah, certainly. So the digital twin is a representation of the building in a digital environment. And so if we have all the sensors that make up a building and all the data around a building, we can have a digital replica of that building. And that means that we can simulate things in that environment. So if you want to understand that if you brought the HVAC on 30 minutes later every morning, what would the temperature be when the first person arrives? Based on our data set we have in our cloud, you can simulate that in the digital twin. And then that's typically linked to a representation visually. So that could be a 3D model. So you can actually see the fabric of the building. You can see all the components that give you better understanding of how things work together. It's a simulated environment, which is a twin of the building, and it will either run real time. So whatever you're seeing in the 3D twin in your browser, you could be on a beach in Barbados, whip your iPad out, load the building up. You can see exactly what's happening in that building on that model at that time. Or you can wind back and see what it was like, 3 months ago. You can compare 3 months to now. Or you can look forward and look at the predictive analytics and say, what was the building going to look like in 3 months' time? And so, it gives you a virtual environment to test strategies, to save energy, and improve your building.
That's really interesting, because it's very easy to anecdotally think one thing's happening and try and make decisions based on what you believe is going on, versus being able to actually then cross-check and go, actually, no, I'm completely wrong. Years ago, I worked in supermarkets, and I remember in the bakery section, you'd often get one thing completely overbaked, and but people love blueberry muffins. You go, well, the data doesn't say they do, but that's all going to go in the bin. So next time, follow the stats.
Well, you say that because we know our data is used to order food. We're based on our occupancy data and our predictions for occupancy. We will order food, and we could go back and look at, like, say, half term this week, for instance, last year, and see what the occupancy levels were, and say, okay, we're going to reduce the amount of food we order by 30% to cater for half term. So it's certainly really powerful for that, and that's why it comes back to this purpose of optimizing environments, people, and the planet. It's all around making these savings, but also making life great. You don't want to come back next week and then there's no blueberry muffins if you like your blueberry muffins. So we can see those patterns and respond to them. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and then the AI or artificial intelligence side, obviously, it's a term that we hear a lot in terms of the common ones, obviously ChatGPT and blog writing and all that type of stuff, but it's got super powerful uses, I understand, in data analysis. So is that what you're using it for then, within the smart spaces side of things? Because you mentioned earlier you've got a lot of data collection, and I imagine otherwise that just sits there. So part of the benefit, obviously, with smart buildings is you've got the app and the engagement and ease of using the building itself, but I imagine you drive a lot more benefit from the data side. So is that where you're using AI
Certainly, yeah. And that's what provides the insight. And it comes down to a few things. It's like, one, the data set now is so large that you can't really interrogate it as a human efficiently. And then two, we create these fantastic dashboards, but obviously that requires time. And sometimes when you look at the dashboard, it's almost too late. You've missed the opportunity. So yeah, we use ML, machine learning, to provide the predictions on our platform. And we made quite a significant hire last year, our head of AI, Alex Michaels, and he's responsible for delivering version 2 of that, which is going great guns. You've also got, obviously, the generative AI, which you mentioned, ChatGPT, which we use a lot of these tools internally to increase the productivity of our team. So our team will use ChatGPT plus a whole host of other services, some connected to Slack, some connected to our Git repository, some connected to the testing in our software. And they will provide code examples or snippets that we can use. So, a typical thing would be a formula to understand screen sizes across all the different Samsung devices. That would be a formula that we can get ChatGPT to write, move that into our code. We have another tool that will analyze whether that's got any security risks, whether it brings any libraries in that we don't know, or open source, which could give us a risk, and increase our productivity. And so we're seeing that, we can get up to like 30% more productivity out of our developers. So we're not looking to replace them with AI, we're supplementing them with AI. It is your assistant. It's the best way to think of it in the generative side. And then obviously the generative stuff will come into our creating posts on our platform as well, because obviously I know that could be time consuming. So we've got that piece. But yeah, the other side of that is the ML, the machine learning, which is the insights engine.